Posting. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to. Well, let me back up. We'll edit that then. This is the Conquering Stress podcast, and we'll be using this to hit up my podcast for conquering stress and different things. As I've talked about, is stress is physical, chemical, and emotional. And this is March is National Nutrition Month, and I've been just kind of posting a little bit more focused on nutrition than all the aspects of health and nutrition. And for those of you that follow you, you know that me and Glen Depke, buddies, pals, we work together, and we just had a conversation. And I had posted something specifically on food sensitivity, and it got a lot of reactions, and it's a hotter topic than I even imagined. I know that you're totally in the space, so you get that. So I want to introduce Glen Depke, a naturopath, a traditional naturopath who has a long history, probably the most well-versed in food sensitivities and hormones, especially female hormones, that I know in the country. He is probably best known, other than his books and his own practice, for starting out with Dr. Mercola, the largest wellness website in the world, where he travels to this day. I can't even keep him in the office anymore. I never know where he is. He's always on the road training doctors and other health practitioners on this specific thing. So there's the official stuff. Now we can just get down to the conversation. Glenn, welcome.
Thank you, Bill. And wow, what a great intro. I'm like sitting there thinking, I was like, I can't wait to hear what this guy says.
Yeah, you got a lot to live up to now. But it was funny that I had posted, I had a list of things that I wanted to cover, just a post a day, just a little bit, starting with what is nutrition, starting out with the basics, and then getting into some of the deeper stuff that we delve into. You're the total expert on that. And I'll let you know that for anytime, I do functional medicine, I dabble in that, and I do a pretty good job on it. And I always say that, yeah, I can figure stuff out, but when I want to go over, it's reflexive. So I'll go to Glenn and I'll say, well, what do you think about this? Or if we have a troublesome case, I'll just pass it off to him. And we were just talking about food sensitivity, and I asked you about that, and we were going over my test. And then you said, let's talk. I'm like, oh no, Dad wants to see me. And it was, eye-opening to me as well. So when did you start doing food sensitivity? And I mean, what is food sensitivity? Let's start out for the people that are starting from ground zero.
Yeah, sure. And there's a big thing with this, because there's often a confusion between food intolerances, food sensitivity, and food allergies. So the way I always look at it is, like a food intolerance is not a sensitivity. Usually a food intolerance is there's something missing in the body, usually an enzyme activity, and it just makes it harder for you to break down that food. Like people who are lactose intolerant are usually missing enzymes they need in their body to break it down properly, and then therefore they get bloated or have some discomfort. A food sensitivity is when there's an immune / inflammatory response to something you're eating. And that typically is the bigger problem with that is the inflammatory response that starts in the gut. And then because there's inflammatory receptors in all the cells in your body, when you start to have this chronic inflammation in your gut, then you become chronically inflamed overall, which then leads you to the point where now your immune system is dysregulated. And then that's driving the food allergies, where your immune system is really just responding and attacking to things it should never attack. Like when people come into my office and they've done this like full-blown food allergy test with another practitioner, and they say, well, he told me I can't eat broccoli, cauliflower, and avocado. I'm always like, well, that's not a broccoli, cauliflower, and avocado issue. That's the dysregulated immune system that's usually driven by the deeper food sensitivities that you're dealing with. That's usually driven by the gut infections you're dealing with, which is usually there because your hormones are all jacked up. So it's all like interconnected in that way.
Wow. So in the old days, we used to have to do elimination diets. When did the more advanced stuff, like the IgG testing, IgA testing, which are immune response testing, when did those really become prevalent?
Yeah, probably within the last 20 years. They've become more popular over the last maybe like 12 years or so. And it's something, it's interesting, Bill, that you asked me to do this because I literally just did an online training to my group on food sensitivity. So it's kind of interesting that this came up so close.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the one thing that I was
For
explaining,
instance,
like very often, what we used to use with the rotation diets and elimination diets years ago often doesn't work because 86% of the people who have a food sensitivity are asymptomatic. So if you're doing a food elimination diet or rotation diet, and you are sensitive to something that you're asymptomatic of, you don't even know you have that sensitivity. Yeah, and so that's where that often fails people. And then the other challenge is that a lot of people are going out and they're doing an IgG only test, which is a whole body immune response. And yet they might not have developed it yet to the point where it's a whole body immune response, but yet they're dealing with a significant IgA response, which is the gut immune response. And sometimes people get these tests back and they'll say, oh, it's okay to eat, like, it just hypothetically, it's okay to eat wheat, rice, and corn. Yet they have an IgA response to wheat, rice, and corn. So every time they eat wheat, rice, or corn, they're driving inflammation in their gut. They're hindering their digestive process because of how the gut and the brain are interconnected. They're affecting their brain function. They're weakening their immune system. They're blowing out their hormonal system based on a test that said that it was okay to eat that. So, which is why when I test for this, I do look at IgG, but I look at IgG with IgA with 100% of the time.
yeah, and that's something I picked up from you because an old test that I was using was simply IgG, and I think the early ones were doing that,
Right.
and picking up both of them and addressing the cause has been a game changer for everything because we're
Right.
getting into the weeds with the stuff. The other thing is that I'll get patients in here sometimes, and they'll ask, they'll say, "Oh, well, I saw this, and it's okay to," because they saw 3 easy steps to get way on their TikTok feed or something, and then they feel better. Uh, do you run across that as well? And how do you explain
Yeah,
people?
well, most people don't understand the depth of all of this. Like even with food sensitive, a lot of people think, "Oh, well, I did this test, now I just need to eliminate that food." Well, what most people understand is there's a reason why you have a sensitivity. And and granted, there are some people who have a genetic reaction and response to certain foods, yet most people it's something functional. So the people think, oh, I'll just do this, or even worse than that, Bill, is like the people think, oh, well, this is a common sensitivity, I'll just eliminate that. And I have a funny story with that too. I don't think I shared this with you, but I had last fall, I was recognizing something was going on my body inflammatory wise, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I was pretty certain there was something I was eating that I was sensitive to, and I couldn't pinpoint it because I was asymptomatic, like I was talking about. 86% of the people are. And then I did a test, and then I mistakenly grabbed a test kit that had an expiration date that had gone past. So I did the test, sent it in, only to get an email saying, well, that test kit was invalid. You have to redo your test. So it just took me time to redo it. And during that time frame when I was ready to redo it, I was just like, well, let me see if I could figure out some things that while I'm waiting for the test results to come back. So in the morning, I make this little like Nespresso Lungo, like a couple ounces of coffee, and I put like a froth heavy cream in there. And I was thinking, well, maybe it's dairy is a pretty common sensitivity. Let me eliminate the heavy cream from my coffee, and instead I added oat milk cream. Yeah, because that's supposed to be healthier per se, right?
Yeah.
And and then and then I get my results back. I'm totally fine with dairy, and I'm sensitive to oats. So I removed something that I was fine with, and I added something that made it even worse. But this is where it's invaluable because I'm totally open to be candid with what's going on with me. I got that test result back, and I ended up being sensitive to Americanized wheat, rice, corn, oats, quinoa, hemp, soy, and yeast. And
All the gluten, the
yeah,
stuff you
the
eat when you
gluten-free food, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things where then when you're working with somebody who knows what they're doing with this, they don't just say, oh, we'll stop eating those foods. Yeah, because the problem aren't those foods for me. The problem was there was something going on in my gut. So then when I got that response back, then I did a test to see what's going on in my gut, and I had some gut infections, and that's what was driving it. And long before all of this, I looked at my hormones, and my hormonal system was off, which now weakens my immune system, leaves me susceptible to picking up infections in my gut. And then the gut infections drive the food sensitivity. It's just like, but people want to just be like, oh, well, I'll just give up this. Or I heard that if I just give up wheat and dairy, everything will be fine. Well, what if you're like me? What if dairy was completely fine with you, and then you put oat milk in your coffee, and all of a sudden you have like 3 years later of all these health issues, right? So round and round we go.
So yeah, it's really interesting because when we were going over my test, and that's what me and Glenn were talking, and he had gone over my test, and I'm like, and I feel great. I don't have a lot of symptoms, which is a perfect what you just said. And I'm like, well, I noticed my estradiol was low, one of the estrogen hormones.
Hmm.
And of course, I go to like, well, of course, because I have so much testosterone running through here that of course it would do. No, no women hormones are going to take. But then you looked over everything, and we looked at the food sensitivity, and then I had a casein, a mild sensitivity to casein, which is in milk and an egg. And I'm like, well, I don't have too much of that. I'll have cheese every once in a while, but and then it dawned on me, and I checked out my protein powder that I was having, and it was driving it because I'm like, Glenn, you got to be wrong because like I can't think. And then I'm like, oh. So for those of you listening, you got two people in the space that do it all the time that kind of make the same mistake because there's nothing tangible to look at.
Right.
So with that being said, we've looked at, okay, we can detect these things. I'm all on board with I want to get this fixed. How would someone know to go over and test? What do they test for? What might they be feeling just in the early stages?
Well, I mean, typically at the very beginning, when all these things are going on, people will feel a little bit fatigued. Maybe their sleep isn't as solid as it used to be. Maybe a little bit of brain fog. Maybe you're, kind of misplacing your keys a little bit more, or not comprehending like you used to. Um, yeah, little bit of GI discomfort can sometimes happen, but not always. You might notice maybe bowel movements changing a little bit. Maybe you're a little constipated. The stool's a little harder than usual, or a little softer than usual. Or maybe even your mood isn't like it used to be. Where maybe stress that used to just roll off your sleeve a couple of years ago, that same level of stress pushes you over the edge now. And it's
So
all those
let
little
me,
things.
yeah. So what you just described, and because I hear this all the time. Well, I'm not 22 years old anymore, so this is normal. I get that all the time. Well, I'm getting old, of course. Or the thing that scares me the most is when people say, ha, 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 I have Alzheimer's disease. Ha, ha, ha. Not really realizing, yeah, you are coming down with that. And it's really fun to chuckle with because everybody else around them has this stuff. Because I think I learned this probably most from you is common is not normal.
No, no, it's
So
like, well, it's even with what you're saying, Bill. When I have a client come into my office, or I'm doing a Zoom call or something, and I've got a bunch of people on there, and somebody makes a comment about the natural aging process. It's I have a lot of fun playing with that. I'll ask, well, what is the natural aging process? Please explain that to me. And I've had somebody explain it almost identically like this. They're like, well, in your 20s, you're vibrant and you're full of energy, and you could stay out late and you still function at a high level and everything's going well. And then in your 30s, you start to gain weight. You're not sleeping as well. You don't recover as quickly. You're feeling a little fatigued. In your 40s, you start to have some more chronic issues, and the doctor diagnoses you. They put you on some medications to help with that. And in your 50s and 60s, you basically get more diagnoses. You get put on more medications. Maybe you've got some surgeries coming up. And then in your 70s, you get some debilitating disease like some neurologic, neurodegenerative condition or some metabolic syndrome or some kind of a cancer, and then you die. And I was, when somebody told me that, I was like, wow, if that's a natural aging process, I'm not signing up for that, and here's the thing. This is what I told that person when they said that. And I was really, honestly, I was hoping they would tell me exactly what they did. And I told them, I said, well, you know what the natural aging process really is based on what you said? And they're like, on the edge of their seat, like what? I said, it's watching sick people get old. And that's not natural. We should, I'll be 59 soon. And I'm in better shape at 59 than I was at 29. And as I'm getting older, I feel like I'm getting younger, not older. Because I'm taking care of the things I need to take care of, because the natural aging process is a very, very slow, steady decline. You should stay energetic and have good muscular tone and balance and good function of your mind and all of this until like right at the at the edge of when you're going to cease to live. And then there's a deep dramatic drop off, and then you die, you move on, right? But up until then, we should still be healthy and vibrant and full of energy and be able to think and remember things and all of that. And unfortunately, most people are on the path of sick people getting older, though. That's that's what we're looking for.
If you I think we're both old enough to remember it said, oh, well, he just died in his sleep.
Right.
Or he died of natural causes. And this is where old people, they just didn't wake up one day. And they go, well, I just saw them yesterday and they were fine. And it's just, and they're done. And that's kind of what I signed up to do. I've never matured, so I don't want to get older. I gotta try to keep my body the same way that my mind is, young and unfiltered. So, you mentioned mental health, and I want to bring this up too, because with the mental and emotional, and then everything that we went through with communism, through 2020, the fear, and we've seen the population with depression, lack of motivation. A lot of people are talking about this new generation that there's not a real lot of hope. How does the foods that we're eating driving like emotional components and motivation and excitement and just kind of vivacious living?
Yeah. And really, to me, three different ways. I mean, number one, when there's a food sensitivity, there's inflammation in your gut, it's really wreaking havoc on your ability to absorb and assimilate your foods. So even if somebody's eating really well, they could be malnourished. So that would be step number one. The second aspect is just tied into anything that, and this more than I do, Bill, being, with your background as a chiropractor and understanding neurological system, is that, the brain and gut are interconnected. 90% of the brain output goes right down the vagus nerve through the spinal column into the nervous system tissue in the gut and comes right back up, right? And so when there's a gut issue, there's a brain issue, and all the newer research too, even like with gluten sensitivity as an example, says that if you have a gluten sensitivity, it's even a much bigger issue for your brain than it is for your gut. And on top of that, when you have a food sensitivity and you continue to eat that food because you're unaware of what the sensitivity is, and that's driving that consistent inflammatory response, well, then it blows out your hormonal system, which plays a big role in regulating what's going on with your neural connectivity, your quality of sleep, your quality of your mood, all these different aspects. So there's really those three main components that are really driving a lot of issues for most people. And the sad part, Bill, is they're unaware of it.
Yeah. And I always talk to my patients about this, is that the worst things that people go through is the things that they don't think is a problem, because then you don't address it.
Right.
And when you don't address it until there's, a big, heavy diagnosis, or it's impacting your life so much that you go, oh, maybe there is something wrong. And once they skip through Google and TikTok and their Instagram feeds for the single quick answer, then a lot of times what they'll jump into a traditional system of health healthcare that will manage their symptoms, but never gets to the underlying cause. And it's the saddest thing because like I say a lot. I say I see dead people. They just haven't buried them yet. And it's just a waiting game. So, what populations are most at risk?
Well, I would say that, I mean, we're all at risk. And usually, for reasons that I'll share, I feel that women are at a higher risk than men because I'm one of the men who's not afraid to say this is that, and Bill, I think you get this, that men have it really easy. We really do. Like women, we don't have equality. Most women, because I work almost not exclusively, but most of my clients are women, and I work mostly with women with helping them understand their hormones and perimenopause and menopause and issues like that. And what I always say is that, what I've seen from working with women for, almost exclusively over the last 18 years is that they spent the last 30 years of their life prior to menopause overworked and overwhelmed and overstressed because they're taking care of their children, they're taking care of their husband, they're taking care of their home. Very often they're involved in their community and or their church. Oh, and they work a full-time job too. So women just really have it unfair in the level that they really have it just much tougher, which then makes them, it basically creates deeper issues hormonally to begin with. It creates these imbalances. And then those imbalances in the hormones also drive issues with inflammatory responses in the body, with immune regulation in the body, and really just so much more. And then what happens is now they're suspect to being picking up infections, and then the more infection you have and you got, the higher the likelihood that you're going to be driving a food sensitivity with that. And that is, from my experience in my practice, I see that as the biggest issue. And now, notwithstanding the other part of the equation, which is people who just eat terrible all the time. People who are eating, most of what they eat is a flour-based product or sugar-based product. Like that's a whole segment of the population that they really should expect all these issues, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of taking the question of, from the standpoint of those who take care of themselves, who's the most likely to have these problems? And I would say women, because they've just got a lot more going on that they have to work with initially.
Well, it's interesting. I want to kind of zoom in to that for a second because I think it's really, really important on what we're talking about. Because one of the things, and we could probably do a whole other week-long podcast on that, is from the traditional female roles and the traditional male roles. Women have taken on a masculine energy and masculine traits, with jobs and things going on throughout the time, and they're holding on to the traditional female. So they're I'm a stress guy too. Conquering Stress podcast, physical, chemical, emotional. So it's the same thing, but they're taking on the traditional roles. They're holding that. Now they're doing this, and now they're taking on masculine traits like hunting and gathering and killing and conquering, like that. There's a testosterone level going up. They're trying to keep their femininity going on. Now we add in the complexities of the female hormones. And what I want you to, this is a trap, Glenn. This is a
I
trap
love
I got
traps.
you. So you've fallen into my web. One of the things is what you see them much more than I, but we both see menopausal women that are going through the change of life. And when I take my history, they said, well, yeah, I'm having premenopause, menopause, or perimenopause, and well, I'm getting the normal symptoms. I want you to talk to us about what's considered normal symptoms, and what are they really?
Yeah. Oh, I talk about this all the time, and I love this because Yeah, women are indoctrinated. It's funny, Bill. Somebody the other day, because I talk when I'm on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, I'm usually talking about female hormones. And I had a woman respond to one of my reels and asked, are you in menopause? And I actually did a video yesterday that I placed on all those, and I basically shared that, yeah, some woman asked if I was in menopause. Of course I'm not in menopause. I'm a man. And I know, and I get why she said it, because a lot of times women will think that, well, why would I be talking about menopause? I could never be in menopause. Yet one of the reasons why it's beneficial to talk to me about menopause is I have not been indoctrinated into the lies of what menopause symptoms are. So when you think that of symptoms of hot flashes or weight gain or mood swings or sleeplessness or any of the different symptoms that are typically recognized as menopause, that's not even a menopause symptom. That's a symptom of a deeper underlying issue hormonally that is driving those issues, because the only two true symptoms of menopause are you stop having a monthly cycle and you can't conceive anymore, and that's it. Like it should be like an easy thing to just transition through. And what I brought up yesterday too is that the same underlying condition or triggers that would create women to have what they think are menopause symptoms would be the same thing that would drive andropause symptoms for men. And yet, again, it's because men have it typically easier. We don't tend to suffer with those symptoms as greatly, because our last 30 years have been much less problematic, much less overwhelming and overstimulating and overstressed. And it just kills me when you hear of women who think that these are all really truly symptoms of menopause, and then they take things like bioidenticals or on estrogen and progesterone, which might make them feel better, might create a symptom care, but that same underlying condition is still going on, and it's driving other problems that you're unaware of until they crop up later. And then, oh, now I'm on this medication and that medication. And it's just like, I want to pull my hair out sometime with it. So,
Yeah, don't do that, because losing your hair sucks too. That's more menopause. But the interesting thing is with that is, again, if we look into uh, traditional care, when they and you know what I get a lot too is, women will be on, well, I'm on birth control, and then they have all these hormonal system or symptoms going on, and then I'll say, okay, well, when did you do this? What did the test say that when they did it? No, I just got a prescription and I just take them. They have no idea what they're putting in, because they've never checked the balance before or after. And traditionally, they're dropping in something that'll take care of a symptom, but it's in the middle of that metabolic or that hormonal pathway. So where are all the metabolites going? So this feels better, but it's causing the damage over here. And like I said, I do the same thing. It's like, I, where did we start and how did this
right.
happen? And
Yeah. And
go ahead.
yeah. And it's so true. Like I've seen, when women have been on the pill, so to say, for years, I've often seen it where they go in for thermography and they recognize that their breast tissue is loaded with estrogen, which is very dangerous.
Yeah.
Or even even from the pill, even like people taking like using a patch for progesterone and estrogen, thinking that it's going to get into blood. Well, not everybody absorbs vascularly very well. So it might not make it into blood. So even if they are testing, Bill, they might not even recognize a raising of what they're using, except it's still getting into the body. It's just sitting in tissue. And I've often in my past, because I'm going to test using urine metabolite testing, which is a 24-hour urine collection, which compared to blood work only shows you what hormones are actually in the blood, whereas the urine testing gives you more of an overall view of where the hormones are in the entirety of the body. And I've seen women who've been on an estrogen patch aren't absorbing it and getting it into their circulatory system, so it's not showing up in their blood, and they keep being told to take more and more because it's not increasing. And then we do a urine hormone test and they're overloaded, like they're in an estrogen dominance, which is a risk factor for breast cancer. I mean, you obviously you don't want that. And yet it's because we're not looking at it comprehensively enough. We're looking at more of what's in the blood and how do we improve that without looking at all the other really underlying conditions, and even like when I'm testing hormones, I'm looking at over 30 different hormones. I'm looking at how the kidney is affecting this, and the liver function is affecting this, and inflammation is affecting this, and gut health is affecting it. It's not just, hey, let's look at these couple things in a blood test, to come to that conclusion. And it's still never really looking at the fact of what's driving the hormonal imbalance in the first place. And one of those major factors is what we're talking about today, which is the food sensitivity.
Yeah, it's amazing to unravel this. And one of the things why I wanted to bring you on to explain in detail and succinctly uh, our technology has just skyrocketed. I think we are doubling our knowledge base every 6 months. Yet the actions we're taking on the information that we're getting isn't changing. And in some cases, I think it's getting less because they're going, oh, well, it's so easy that I don't really have to do anything. Or people, they just, well, someone will cure this later on. I'm sure I'll just keep on abusing myself because, like, I'm addicted to it. I just enjoy it too much. And they're not able to take advantage of everything that we have going on. Just like this food sensitivity test, this is a game changer on the people that really want to key in their health. And it's interesting, and I don't know if it's because of the last few years or what, but just this whole month, a lot of my new patients that are coming in are saying, I just want to take control of my health. I can
Mm-hmm.
see where this is going, and I don't want this to happen again. So it's conversations and um, information like this that I want to get out, and I want to get out in a big way because I mean, is this difficult to take care of?
Well, that's the thing. It's not, and it's not difficult to take care of. It takes a level of commitment. It takes some time. It takes a little bit of effort, and it takes some expense. Yet, I mean, think about it. What more important thing in your life do you have than your health? And some people say, well, my children are more important. Okay, well, if you want to be around to enjoy your children and to be interactive with your children, you need your health. Some people might say it's my spouse. Well, still, you need your health. Or they might say their job. Well, how much better are you going to do your job if your brain works well and you have higher levels of energy? Everything really does begin with our health. And it's something that I think we've gotten away from in our society. And as you said though, Bill, it's definitely on its comeback though. And people are starting to understand these things. And it's really not that difficult to, do a comprehensive hormone test. It's really not difficult to have your blood drawn to see what foods you should eliminate. And it's not really difficult to see what infections you have in your gut. Like these things are all relatively easy and relatively inexpensive. And and here's the big difference too, is that when I remember years ago, Bill, this is an interesting story. Is I had a woman we looked at her hormones and we did a stool collection for her gut infections to see what was going on there, and we did food sensitivity. So I was able to tell her what foods to get off of, and I gave her a protocol for her hormones. And unfortunately for this woman, and fortunately I should say, because you want to find these things out, but she had so many pathogens. She had a parasite in her gut. She had a detrimental bacteria, an H. pylori infection, and a yeast infection all at the same time.
Wow.
And I was almost apologetic. Well, no, not almost. I was apologetic. I says, I'm sorry, I'm recommending so much to you, yet you have so much going on in your gut that needs to be addressed. And she told, what she told me, and this was so awesome of her perceptions. Is she says, you know what? You're telling me I might have to do this for maybe 6 months. I'm going to take a bunch of capsules for 6 months to get rid of these things that I have. She said, most of my friends are on that many prescriptions and they're going to take them the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing.
Yeah, and that's the amazing thing. And you're talking about, what is the most important thing in your life? and some people just, well, my kids, I'm gonna just, and they martyr themselves
Mhm.
for their kids, and not even realizing that they're programming their kids to a lifestyle that they're
Mhm.
doing. Well, we always ate this as I was growing, and it becomes an emotional, like, comfort food. Oh, well, we
Right.
always had deep fried, gluten plastic food, and we did this and they're passing down these traits to their kids. So if you really love your kids, live for them. I don't know, I pulled it right out of the colon. I was finishing up a talk, and I was talking about something, and I used to, maybe I'll bring it back, so I shouldn't do it, but I'll do it for you guys here listening to it. I would go through a talk, and I would talk about health and chiropractic and nervous system, and I said, "Who here has kids? Who loves their kids? Who would die for your kids?" And all the, I will. And then I just stopped and I said, "Who's willing to live for their kids?" And it's a totally different mindset.
Mhm.
It's because,
Yeah.
like, I have, I got 2 kids. We're not really as committed to living to teenagers as we are the young ones. But but we need to be that example of, it's possible for you to do this. You have to have a proof of concept to do that. So I'm going to respect your time this time, but I'll drag you back in and expand on some of this stuff, because I know that we're going to get a lot of questions. I'm such a rookie, and right in front of Ken Walls over here, who taught me about StreamYard, and then Bob Donnell's actually on here as well, and I appreciate that. Debbie's on here. There's a couple other people that have chimed in, and I apologize for you not talking, but I'm so enthralled with Glenn's conversation that I ignored you. So sorry.
So
Not
so
really.
then there's that.
Yeah, there's that. I ignored you. But I hope that you're receiving the message that I intended to bring to you guys today. Is we have the technology, we have the ability to take care of a lot of these things, and if your life means enough to you, that you have dreams, goals, and plans that you want to get, and you want to share that, not only with yourself but your family and friends, your community. Take care of yourself, because there's nothing really more important than you living a long and vital health, and you know taken away. So, Dr. Bill Janishak with Glen Depke, traditional naturopath, signing off. So, peace out.
Peace out.
I mean,